on behalf of Beat Latino and also ChicagoMusic.org, I'm Catalina Maria Johnson, and I'm here with A Tribe Called Red. Hello, everybody.
Hey,
How are you?
How's it going?
How's it going?
All the way from really far, right? How far are you guys?
What's it? 8-hour drive to Chicago?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm 8 hours north.
Yeah, we're like 8 hours north of you.
Yeah.
In Ottawa. So for those who might not know, A Tribe Called Red is three amazing DJs and visual artists who put on an incredible electronic powwow that I've had the privilege of participating in or witnessing several times. So tell us who each of you are and your role in terms of the configuration of A Tribe Called Red.
My name's Dan General, also known as DJ Shub, and I do a lot of scratching during the during our performances. So, yeah.
Great.
So that, yeah.
And in the center?
I'm DJ Indian, Ian Campo. I do some of the producing and I DJ on stage.
Awesome.
I'm Bear Witness, and I DJ and do the video.
It's been like really a treat to see what you put together. I've had the chance to see it at Womex and also in Greece, and then also in New York City at Global Fest, and then most recently in New Orleans at Jazz Fest. But one of the things that caught my eye was for the first time I got the chance to really appreciate the visuals. So tell me a little bit about sort of the musical vision. What did you want to do with your sound, and what are you doing? And I know that Bear Witness has a lot to do with this, with the visuals that we see on the screen.
Well, for this album, anyways, with the music, it was the first time that we actually had a label behind us that opened up the recordings for us to start remixing. So there's a powwow label, like a drum label, yes, we got to remix powwow music for the first time that was recorded in different tracks. Because typically when you record a powwow drum, you just put like a big boomstick in the middle of the drum and catch all the sound. But because we asked for it very nicely, that they recorded it differently, and then they recorded like a singing track, and then like a backup vocal track, and then a drum track for us. So it was a way different experience than what we did before with the tracks on our first album. So it really opened up a lot of different ways we can manipulate the songs and remix the songs, and it gave us a whole new aspect and way to do what we do. And again, like the Tribal Spirit label also started like recording music differently than it has been before for powwow music.
But from the beginning, the idea was to bring the powwow to the 21st century or the 22nd century, or
well, powwow, that's a really good misconception, is that powwow, it's still vibrant. It's still a very, very vibrant culture that's happening right now. And all the drums that we sampled for the new album are all young guys, like, between the ages 17 and 25.
Wow, that
so
I
this,
didn't.
yeah.
Think of it as like some kind of ancient ritual that might be preserved by a few elders.
That's right, but it's actually a very, very vibrant culture today that goes on. So we're not remixing, every track that we remixed except for General Generations has been made within the last 15 years.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a very new music that we're remixing.
Huh. And then the visuals. Tell me about the visuals, because I really hadn't had a chance to appreciate them.
The video work is just taking a look at depictions of Aboriginal people through the media, through film and TV, and looking at these one-dimensional, racist, stereotypical images and misrepresentations of Aboriginal people, and dissecting them, deconstructing them, and putting them back together into another story, into a story I want them to tell, and in effect indigenizing these misrepresentations. There's a long history that goes, all the way back to like portrait painting of Aboriginal people not having control of their own image and always being seen through the lens of the colonizers. So Now we're coming into a time for the first time since colonization that we've had that power. We're starting to represent ourselves the way we want to be represented. A Tribe Called Red is a really good example of how that's happening. But before part of that growth is not to just sweep aside all this long history of misrepresentations, but to take time now to discuss them and to look at them and talk about what, just the whys and the hows before we forget about them.
Well, interesting when you talk about, stereotypes. I know there was some controversy recently with a sports group, right, up your way, in terms of.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. There's a youth football team called the Redskins, and I have kids, so like it for a youth football team to legitimize a term that's described or defined in every modern dictionary as offensive, I think is completely inappropriate. So that's if you take race out of everything, like naming a youth football team a word that's defined as offensive shouldn't happen. But it's legitimizing a racial term against my children for youth. So like them cheering for the Redskins is gonna think that it's okay to call my daughter a Redskin in the playground, and that's why I've been very vocal about the name.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I know it's been a heated subject online, to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm glad that it's fascinating that you're bringing up all these points, and at the same time, there's this amazing music that's happening, that's being created. And it's my understanding that you've also had some collaborations with, I think, a DJ in Mexico and other Aboriginal-ly influenced musicians around the world. Tell me a little bit about those collaborations.
Yeah, we've had. We
don't have to raise your hand.
No, we had a collaboration with Javier Estrada, and he's from Monterrey, Mexico, and it was just about being involved in this whole like Aboriginal indigenous movement, right? As far as music goes, so like. Javier Estrada, he's using all these conch shell samples, and he's using Aztec samples, stuff that is to him, that's what his music is about. So, I mean, he's doing the same thing that we were doing, so it was only fitting that we get together and do stuff, who else have we done collaborations with? Like,
well, a lot of like First Nation groups here in Canada, and some rappers we're working with, some like Indigenous rappers here in Canada. Some like even indigenous cellist players and stuff like that. Yeah.
Wow.
So we've been working with a lot of First Nations all over the world.
Well, remind me that in terms of nations, I know that you all come from the same nation. I don't know how the.
No, I'm Ojibwe or Anishinaabe, and they're both Cayuga from Six Nations. Our nations and our culture, our languages, just to show you how different they are as different as English and Chinese.
Oh wow.
They're completely different, like different writing, different words, different everything. Like they're completely different. So, yeah, just to show, like, just the fact that we're a Tribe Called Red and we're able to show that, and that we're not this pan-Indianism, that we're all the same type of people all over the world. There's 700 distinct nations in North America.
Wow.
And, the pan-Indianism is a good way of the term Redskin, again, or like the Cleveland Indians. That's a way of dehumanizing all of us in one straight brush. You know what I mean? Like, it's taking away our culture and our heritage and just saying you guys are just Indians or Redskins, and like just leaving it at that, instead of showing that we're as different as English and Chinese. You know what I mean? Like we're completely different cultures.
Wow. Yeah, it's as an entire education. So I hope that people investigate a little further too, beyond even just having a very wonderful time and dancing, which also happens.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm curious, the name Tribe Called Red. Whose idea was that, or how did that come about?
That came about with we wanted something that reflected both us being urban, because none of us grew up on a reserve, but would also be recognizable to people on reserves. So the rural communities where A Tribe Called is used in a lot of drum groups and on a lot of reserves. So like you'd have like A Tribe Called Micmac or A Tribe Called, you know, Big Stone and stuff like that. Like they'd have Letterman jackets that would say like A Tribe Called Micmac on it and stuff like that. So, and then obviously being urban, like huge influence on my upbringing, on all of our upbringing was A Tribe Called Quest. So it was just a way that we found a term that was recognizable in both the urban and, you know, reserve life. And then red comes from a teachings that we have with the medicine wheel, where it has like 4 colors. And the red in it represents the indigenous people of the world. So that's why we chose red.
Wow, wow. Now I can imagine that your music is very successful with, you know, the younger members of the nations as well as everybody else. I can attest to that. But what about like the older generation and the elders? Are they you know, are they happy at what you guys are doing, or has there been any kind of resistance? I'm curious.
No, not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah. You know, it's definitely something that we have to be sensitive to. You know, respecting the things that we're using to make our music. You know, that's an important part of what we're doing. So, you know, would definitely be willing to listen if anybody has an issue. But so far, the kind of hardest comment has been about us using the word powwow in a situation where alcohol is being served, so in bars and clubs. But that's usually immediately followed with, but I really love what you're doing. Yeah. So, like, we get stories of whole families, you know, right from, you know, everybody's got stories of their kids dancing to their music, regardless of their background. But then so many stories of people it's their parents who've said, "Oh, you got to check this out." You know, so.
That's wonderful. So remind us again of the names of the albums. So you've got 2 albums out.
Yeah, the first one was self-titled, and it was made by the fantastic advice of our manager Guillaume. Where we had, you know, we made all these tracks and we started getting some shine and stuff on blogs from our SoundCloud, but it was Guillaume that was like, all right guys, you need to put together like a package that can get reviewed and could get, you know, on college radios and that sort of thing. So yeah, it was, the first one was basically all Guillaume, and that was all tracks that we had over, you know, 3 years, I think, or 2 or 3 years, just kind of compiled together to make this one that was a good idea, and it came out, you know, with rave reviews, and we're still flabbergasted by the stuff that people said. There's no,
Yeah.
But
and the second one is
Nation to Nation.
Nation to Nation.
Yeah, and it's a term that describes all of our relationships, from as micro as like us three. Being like me being a different nation than they are, so that's a nation to nation relationship. And then you go out a bit further than like as First Nations and settler nation, like there's that's another nation to nation conversation that needs to start happening and is starting to happen. And then like even macro again, you have like the nations all over the world and just so on and so forth. So it's just like interacting and recognizing that we're all different nations and respecting that.
Well, can't wait to see you here in Chicago at the end of the month, at the end of May. What a treat.
Yeah, we'll be there too.
What a treat. So thanks so much for your time.
Anything for you.
We've been spending some time with A Tribe Called Red, and it's Dan, Ian, and Bear Witness, also known as DJ Shub, DJ Indian, and that's very interesting, NDN, so a cool way to say it.
That's a very res way of spelling it.
And Bear Witness, all the way from Ottawa. Take care, safe travels, and see you here soon.
Thank you so much.
Ona.